Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. The 12 Days of Spawnmas marches on with Spawn number 8. So if you don't know what we're doing, we're talking about Spawn for 12 days in a row leading up to Christmas. This is a little sneak preview of what you're going to get in 2022, and Rocky and I are going to try to read a ton of Spawn. We're going to try to get caught up. So we'll see how that goes. But in the meantime, as I said, we're up to issue number 8. This is the first issue that's written by somebody other than Todd McFarlane himself. So it's not, Stories, Pencils, Inks by Todd McFarlane. The story here is actually by Alan Moore. Todd McFarlane is credited as the artist, Tom Orzechowski on letters, Steve Oliff on colors. And, I am sort of curious how much input McFarlane had into this story because, you figure Alan Moore, typically what he does, it's a little Morrison-esque, I guess you'd say. I mean, obviously, Alan Moore came a long time before Grant Morrison, but Moore was always somebody who really mined the kind of the history of the character. So with somebody like Spawn, there's not really any history to mine. So did he? Obviously, he probably read the previous issues, but it dovetails in very well to what McFarlane was doing, but with a lot fewer words. So this is probably in terms of structure, in terms of like technically making a comic, it's probably the best one of the first, at least
Not,
of what we've read so far.
not so
I feel
wordy.
like,
Less
yeah,
exposition.
yeah, it lets the art do this the heavy lifting. And here's the other thing, and I'll see if you agree, Rocky. I feel like this is the best art we've seen too, and maybe it's because McFarlane didn't have to worry about the script that he just got to draw. I feel like the art in this one, maybe it's McFarlane cutting loose because it's in this sort of, I don't know, dream afterworld kind of thing. This is many years before the Matrix, but it has a little bit of a Matrix feel in terms of the pods the people are growing in. But I don't know. I feel like this is the best art that McFarlane gives us in the first issues that we've read so far. Maybe it's the art that seems most like what we got from him in his Marvel years. So
Yeah, it's.
I
I
don't know.
have to confess. I have to confess that when I read this, I didn't realize until you told me that Alan Moore wrote this, and I've been so drowned in exposition by Todd McFarlane in the previous 7 issues that this read effortlessly. And I thought Alan Moore captures the. I think he captures the tone and the mood of McFarlane's script very well, but as you alluded to, there is much less exposition and it works just as well. And it allows Todd McFarlane to show off his art a little bit more. So it's going to be interesting to see as we review all these issues of Spawn how Todd McFarlane himself evolves as a writer, if he maybe takes some lessons as he learns from Alan Moore here and some other guest writers that he might have from time to time.
Yeah, issue 9 is Neil Gaiman,
Oh,
and that's a whole nother thing with the lawsuit and all that kind of thing. But anyway,
yeah.
issue 8, it starts off and we see this sort of shadowy form of Spawn, and somebody's talking, they're narrating the issue, talking about the worst thing that ever happened. And honestly, he doesn't think he's over what happened to him. He killed 27 kids and kept the bodies in the ice cream truck. And at that point, we know, well, this is Billy Kincaid that's sort of narrating here. And we find out that after Spawn killed him, he's been sort of reborn in his afterlife. Like I said, one of those little pods kind of looks like the pods that the people are trapped in the Matrix, and his body's sort of regrowing itself. And he's
Yeah.
talking about the terror of being killed or whatever. And then eventually the pod he's in breaks off, maybe because of the weight that he's fully grown. It breaks off of the branch that it's on. It hits the ground and it kind of bursts open, and he realizes he's butt naked and sticky. So he kills a lizard and takes his skin and gives him something to wear while he's in this place. Um, and it isn't too long before he's, I guess, hatched. We'll say that he meets up with some other supposed survivors. There's a blonde woman. There's an older man. There's an older African American woman. There's a kind of a shorter, dumpy, chubby guy, and then there's a little girl. And they're sort of explaining to him, yeah, they all died, and then they woke up in this sort of otherworldly orchard. and the little girl Jessica seems to have the most knowledge of this place for whatever reason. And of course, Billy's instantly attracted to her. Says, "My name's Billy Kincaid. Mr. Chili's my professional name. What should we do since we're you know all here? What's to do here but beyond just survive?" And little girl Jessica's like, "Well, there's 10 deadlands, there's 10 spheres, one inside the other, and this is the lowest sphere, the reception area. If you want to have access to the other spheres, you've got to climb the tower." And while she's talking, all of a sudden this bright light shines down from above, and the African American woman's like, "Oh, I knew when I went in for my gallbladder operation, they wouldn't forget about me." She's very religious, and she thinks this light that's shining down on her is God. And we see this sort of otherworldly, robotic yet angelic sort of creature. I mean, just immense, gigantic in terms of what these humans look like. But she's got flaming hair, she's got a halo, she's got wings, but she's got a very robotic looking neck and arms. And she's asking about who sings the songs, and the black woman's like, "Oh, me, I sing them all the time." And she's like, "Okay, great," grabs her and heads off. And when she leaves on a rocket pack, and they're like, "Well, that's not an angel. Angel wouldn't have a motor on their back." And Jessica's like, "Oh, that was a soul trapper from the sixth sphere. They keep souls as pets there. And this year, the fashionable thing is to have singers. Last year it was acrobats. So one down, so to speak, as these people are trying to survive." And when Jessica goes to sleep that night, Billy Kincaid, ever the child predator, stares at her and wonders, um, what his next move might be. But eventually he falls asleep, and he has nightmares of somebody in a flapping cloak with chains and spikes and skulls, and he never wants to see that thing again. Obviously, it's Spawn that he's thinking about. He's having nightmares about being killed. And so the next day, and it's never quite clear what exactly they're trying to do or go, but they do get up. They're moving around, and not 5 minutes after they get up and start on their trek, there's a ray that comes from the sky and disintegrates the older guy. And again, the little girl Jessica, ever the know-it-all. "Oh, that was a prime monad from the highest sphere, the 10th. They handpick souls to use as circuitry in the macro computer. You don't see that every day.
Yeah.
So your friend's lucky." Like, wait,
The guy's name was Larry. Yeah.
yeah,
Larry had a bad day.
yeah, lucky Larry, right? Like, and Billy even thinks that, well, there's not enough of Lucky Larry left to bury, so we just kind of move on. And next, Fat Bob is the one to sort of meet his maker. He loves Elvis apparently, and so there's this other being who disguises itself uh, as Elvis and ends up devouring Bob. And again, there's Jessica to explain it. "Oh, that's a Thuggin med abuse from the fifth sphere. They get addicted to the drug rush of eating souls or snorting souls or ingesting souls in some way." So there goes Bob. He's the next one to get it. And then no sooner do we turn the page that the girl, I can't, Kimberly, that's what her name is. She's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, look at this beautiful crystal. It's just like a crystal I used to have back on Earth." And before she knows it, the crystal is actually kind of the back abdomen of this insect-like creature, and it envelops her, and off she goes. So now she's gone. So now it's just Billy and this little girl Jessica, um, and he's thinking, "Man, I'm not sure, like, if I can even sleep with the way this place is so scary and spooky and threatening." But when he does finally fall asleep that night, he does have the dreams of Spawn again. And again, this is all done really, really well in terms of the vocabulary and sort of the mood that Alan Moore is setting with, again, an economy of words, like Rocky was saying. We're not covering up the McFarlane art with just tons of exposition like McFarlane had done himself. So eventually he wakes up from his bad dream. He's like, "You know what? I need to calm me down. I'm so jittery. I need to do what I do best, basically." And so he finally goes to attack Jessica. And right as he grabs her by the throat and he's about to choke the life out of her, we see this crack start to form in her forehead. And she says, "Well, it's about time. I wonder how long it'd be before you croak the know-it-all bitch. Glad to see you still have what it takes, Chili." And she cracks open, and come to find out it was never Jessica at all. It's the Violator. But what's interesting is, and again, I don't know if it's because McFarlane had more time to work on the art here because he wasn't writing. He looks a little more insect spider like, more well defined than he did in the early issues, and
Yeah.
in in my mind, like creepier. Like he just looked sort of weird before, but when McFarlane depicts him here, he's he's kind of terrifying, much more horrific in my mind. And he introduces himself as Violator. He says, "Great disguise, right? Sorry about entrapping you, but we wanted to see if you were the kind of guy that's worthy of going to the eighth sphere." And he starts chasing Billy, and Billy runs toward the tower. Again, maybe he thinks he can escape. And as he's running up the tower, he quickly runs out of gas, and he's like, "I can't go anymore." Violator picks him up, and then as they're climbing up the tower, the Violator sort of narrating what each of the levels are, and then eventually, when they get to the eighth level, or what the Violator calls home, we see, and again, that it's exposition in terms of we're learning more about Al Simmons and Spawn, because they decide that Billy is an evil soul. And remember, Malebolgia wants to recruit people for his army, for his fight against Heaven. Um, and they say, okay, Malebolgia has his special slaveware, and we'll whistle up yours. Let me introduce you to K3 Miraloo. She's a constantly evolving neural parasite. And it's basically looks like the Spawn costume. And so Billy is bonded to this Spawn looking costume with the skull and the cape and the spikes and the chains, just like Spawn was. And, he talked about in his nightmares, that was the last thing he ever wanted to see. Now that's him every time he looks in the mirror. So obviously he doesn't exactly have the same sort of muscular build that Al Simmons does. So wearing the skin tight outfit doesn't quite look the way you would want it to look. And he's sort of complaining. Billy is like, "This isn't fair. The afterlife shouldn't be full of alien monsters, shouldn't be processing cattle like humans." And Violator's like, "Good, evil, forget about all that. We're running a business down here. And whenever you're in the lobby of hell, it's not good or evil that you see carved anywhere. It's two other words. And what they say is this: caca happens, little buddy. Caca happens." As Billy's presented before Malebolgia as one of his soldiers. And we see in the background, in the foreground, a bunch of other souls that have bonded to that sort of living parasite. So um,
Yeah, it
early on, in only issue 8, we're introduced to the idea that there's many hell spawns that exist in this universe.
yeah, and just it sort of alludes to your earlier point that this is written by Alan Moore, and this isn't Alan Moore referencing a rich history of Spawn. He's actually creating it. He's building on it. He's actually, I mean, McFarlane is actually using Alan Moore to actually expand the mythology of Spawn early on, because we weren't aware that the devil, that Malabrosia, had this number of hell spawn on this eighth sphere of hell, where the Vindicator is one of these Fleabag brothers who is one of he's in charge of recruiting all these people in this eighth sphere of hell. I mean, Alan Moore is doing some mythology building here for McFarlane's character, which is quite interesting. I never really thought about it that way before. And like you said, with Neil Gaiman coming in next issue, uh, this was this was actually quite interesting. I thought this employed misdirection quite well. I actually have open questions, like all these characters that Billy Kincaid met when Billy Kincaid woke up and he's in hell. And all these characters, he met Larry, Claudette, Bob, little Jessica, who was, of course, the temptation, because Billy Kincaid he's a pedophile bastard. I wondered, well, who is Larry? Who's Claudette? And I kept asking myself, well, what did they do wrong? How did they end up in hell? And the impression I got was that this was all just an illusion, some elaborate ruse, some elaborate hallucination, that Billy Kincaid was just a mind game played by the Vindicator. That, at least that's what it appears like to me, and all just with the way of just sort of toying with him to play with his mind, and then at the end torture him some more before forcing this sick parasite on him, this K3 Marilou, as you said, that basically turns him into a fat spawn. So it's this is like I said, I think this is probably one of the more interesting issues. This is one of the better ones, and as you said, the more conservative use of narration really helped that really helped this story being told, because it was a more conservative use of language, which allowed McFarlane to show off more of his art.
Yeah, and I wonder. I mean, did McFarlane recruit Alan Moore and say just do whatever you want, or was it,
Yeah.
what was this a collaboration? Like, hey, I want to expand on this. The idea of Spawn, that there's many Hellspawn. I mean, certainly we saw in McFarlane's early stories where he's, through Malebolgia, he's talking about having an army of millions and needing millions more. So yeah, I kind of wonder about that. But yeah, it's done very well, and yeah, there are a lot of open questions, but the story, whether it's an illusion, whether it's a purgatory afterlife where these people, maybe they weren't that bad, but they were just bad enough to end up there, or whatever. It sort of doesn't matter, because Alan Moore gives us like a satisfying enough conclusion when we sort of see Billy Kincaid get his comeuppance, and we know he's going to spend the rest of his life suffering. Because again, no subtlety from Todd McFarlane. Kincaid is a bad guy, and even after Spawn kills him, for him being a pedophile, even in the afterlife, he goes to attack a kid. Like, this is a guy who never will learn, and so yeah,
Well,
there's a sense of satisfaction in the ending that Billy Kincaid gets what's coming to him.
and there's also a sense of ominous foreboding, because the question I have is, and I don't remember the answer to this, because I have to. I'm reading these stories, I feel, almost for the first time at this point. Is, he's got this massive army. Why doesn't he attack the Earth? Like, why doesn't he go to the reality and attack reality? If he's got all these Hellspawn, I don't know if I quite understand why is Al Simmons allowed to be spawned on Earth, and these spawns, all these hell spawns, are trapped in hell? What has to happen for Malabrosia to unleash his hellish army on Earth? I don't know what has to happen yet, because otherwise, why doesn't he just release all these hellspawn on Earth now? What's he waiting for? Why is Al Simmons given the honor or privilege of being on Earth to do what he wants, but not all these other hellspawn? What's so special about Al Simmons? I'm not sure if I know the answer to that, and maybe that will be revealed. But it poses some interesting question. It definitely makes me go, So interesting. It's definitely a nice appetizer. Whets the appetite for future issues.
Yeah, and this isn't the last issue of Spawn that Alan Moore will write. He does some other issues later on, specifically one where Spawn fights somebody or something that is a little bit unexpected. So, but all in all, this is it's a really solid issue. But I did look around to see if I could find some like interviews or news articles of the time to talk a little bit, because basically what I wanted to know was this Alan Moore just taking what McFarlane had already built and telling a story, or did McFarlane say, "Hey, come and tell a story. Um, I need to expand on the mythology." Like, how much input into the story did Todd McFarlane have? I mean, if he's smart, he didn't have any. He's just like, "Hey, Alan Moore, go do your thing,"
Mhm.
and I'll just draw it. But I was curious, but I couldn't find anything. So if I'm curious if anybody knows, or it'll be something I'll ask Todd, and who knows if he'll even remember, being that this is like 30 years ago now. So,
Yeah.
but
Well,
anyway, yeah, super enjoyable issue for sure, and it has me really excited to read the Neil Gaiman, because I have to admit, I didn't remember what happened in issue 8. Like, looking at the cover, I was trying to remember. I'm like, what is issue 8 about? That's the one that Alan
yeah.
Moore wrote. Like, I didn't remember at all. Obviously, we know issue 9 has Angela on the cover, and it's Angela, so that one's kind of stands out. But still, Neil Gaiman, haven't read it in 30 years, so that'll be on tomorrow's Spawn Miss day 9. So be sure you join us for that. Anything else to add about this issue, Rocky?
I just, there's a Pyrian fanboy in me. I just want to give a call out to the character known as Kimberly. She looks like a beautiful cave woman here. I mean, the breasts. I mean, we call them back in the 40s. We called we called them headlights. This would have been a headlight comic. This was wow. I mean, check out the size of the eyes on this Kimberly character. Let me tell you, I mean, this is provocative, I just find it ironic that Billy Kincaid, that he's surrounded by this beautiful woman Kimberly, and sick pedophile bastard that he is, he's eyeing up little Jessica. There's something sick and disgusting about Billy Kincaid, obviously, and again, he's such a disgusting character, disgusting human, that even though the final fate of Billy Kincaid, the fact that it's almost disturbing to me a little bit that Billy Kincaid gets to survive as a hellspawn, because I want the guy to continue to suffer in hell. I don't want that bastard to be able to be a hellspawn. You know what I mean? So it almost kind of like it's satisfying that he's in hell, but at the same time, I don't like the fact that evil bastards get a second chance, even at being a soldier in hell. You know what I mean? So I kind of like how that disturbs me too. There's a sickening aspect to that. There's a disturbing element to this comic in Billy Kincaid that's just, it's eerie and it's a little perturbing and disturbing. And it kind of leaves a little bit of a bad taste in my mouth, but in a good way. It's like, this is a sick character, but yet it's got Pyrian fanboy. It's got a little bit of provocativeness. It's got evil. It's got violence. It's touching all the buttons, so to speak. So, again, I continue to just have a shit-eating grin on my face. And like I said before in previous issues, all the characters with shit-eating grins on their faces in McFarlane and Spawn, they're all bad guys. So that's why I'm wearing the naughty hat right now. So for the 8th day of the 12 days of Spawnmas.
Yeah, definitely the case. So, all right, everybody, be sure you join us tomorrow for day 9 of Spawnmas. And be sure you're heading over to YouTube. Do a search for Comic Boom, Comic Space Boom, ! Subscribe to Rocky's channel so you don't miss any content. Also, be sure you're subscribed to the Comic Source podcast on your favorite podcasting app or platform. So, once again, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Hanukkah, whatever it is you celebrate. We hope it's a joyous time. And we appreciate the support as always. We'll talk to you next time.
Feliz Navidad.